right. Hey, everybody. I've got my good friend Anton W. Blake with me today to talk about his new book, Zethia Space Witch, out now from Cosmic Lion Productions. You can go to cosmiclionproductions.com and get a copy of it. This is a super interesting book for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to let you kind of just give us like a bit of the gist of, what made you want to make this book?
Um, so I have for a long time been wanting to get into doing a lot of mixed media in my comics. I think like trajectory from like when we did image grand design to now like shows a kind of steady progression towards that. I mean, artists like Bill Sienkiewicz and he's my favorite artist, like Michel Fiffe, all those types of guys that like kind of push the boundaries of typical comic art and using their various possible mediums and styles even is really inspiring to me. And so this was kind of the final like plunge all the way into doing that. Previous to this, I had just last year, I had done a 5-pager in the newest Ghost Agents Metropolis that was kind of my testing ground, you could say, for going full on like mixed media. Like there's a lot of techniques that I'd never tried there before.
Yeah.
And even in this, like there's some things that I hadn't really tried prior. So once I did those pages, I realized I could do comics in this way a lot faster than I typically could with traditional like pen and ink and like maybe digital color or anything like that. For whatever reason it was just
Interesting.
yeah, I think part of it had to do with that I was able to kind of strategize of like, okay, I've painted this spot on this page. While that goes dries, I'll go over on my like other table and like do some collage elements,
So you
and
can
then
multitask, right?
yeah. So yeah, it ended up being the fastest I've ever done a book. I started the first page, this page here, on like the first week of February, and by I think the second to last week of March, everything was done, like covers and everything. Um, and on top of that was even like driving up to IC3 and back. Um,
Yeah.
so it was kind of a test to see if I could do it at that kind of pace. And partially because I had a convention here, Staple Independent Media Expo, that was a few months away when I started just toying with the concept of the comic, and knowing that I was faster after those Ghost Agents pages. I was like, what is it possible? Can I do this in time and have it physically like there at my table at Staple? And sure enough, I did. So it was a great experiment. It After a while, close to the end, it got very tough with those mixed media, and we'll get into some of that. But yeah, it was incredibly inspiring, very fun to do. I've also like story-wise wanted to um, have something that's kind of silly and whimsical,
Hmm.
but also can maybe touch on difficult subjects
Sure.
in our lives. There's a like manga and anime subgenre called isekai, or yeah, or iyashikai, excuse me. That's sort of a slice of life, like just meant to give kind of like a cozy, relaxed feeling. It was very popular in Japan in the late 90s, early 2000s, when just generally people were stressed the hell out
Yeah.
and needed a release. So I kind of wanted to take elements of that and put in just some strange like science fantasy. I love mixing of genres like that. So like just meld all of those sorts of things into one comic. And I feel like too, like lots of media these days is kind of geared more grim or not, I guess, like a whimsical, cozy feel, you know. And I want more of that. I want
Yeah.
more levity within my media, because
Yeah.
we got plenty of difficult, bad things happening in real life. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And yet this issue is about death.
yes, it was a funny accident. I don't even fully remember how it ended up being that way. It just kind of organically happened.
Yeah, these books will tell you what they want to be if
Mhm.
they're any good. So and this is. So
Like,
what are you using to with these initial pages here?
um, so
Media
the
wise.
background is mostly watercolor, and then there's a little bit of gouache and ink and colored pencil.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then that flower up front is collaged in piece. Like that base blue is blue paper, and I just used various colored pencils and things to like kind of accentuate all of that, and a
Ah,
little bit of paint, a little bit of whiteout for the interior of that sort of tulip shape there.
sure.
And then after I finished that first panel, I scanned it and printed it off and pasted it down for the rest of the panels. And then the silhouette of Zethia coming up and then close up inspecting it are done on the page, and just basically like cut those pieces out of the um, printed copies of the background so that it had that consistent shot, basically.
Wow. So you didn't just like copy it in Photoshop. You like physically pasted it onto the page.
Yeah, and it's a little bit subtle on the printed page, but the like physical page, it's much more noticeable. It was something I was like, as I was
Oh
starting
yeah,
to
you
get
can
into
see a little bit
this.
of shadow here.
Hmm. Yeah, and I would like tape off the border, like the gutters there, and that's part of where that shadow comes from.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I was looking back at particularly some Electra Assassin, and there's a lot of use of photocopies and like pasting
yeah.
down to
Yep.
repeat panels in that. And with that, given the the technology of the time, like it's a lot more obvious.
Yes.
Um, but I the first couple of times I would see that, I didn't love it, but the more I've reread that book, it was like I actually really I love that because it gives you the glimpse into the making of it.
Yeah.
So since I wanted as much of the page to be on like the physical paper, I decided I'd give that a go.
That's really awesome. The way that her face is up here on here, uh, is that a different technique than altogether? Because it almost looks like when you pop her in here with this like flat color and this one shade, it looks like animation, like a
Mhm.
80s animation with like a painted background, and then you got this like flat cell face.
Yeah, so the her skin tone is the only digital part of this page.
Okay.
Like her skin tone throughout is digital.
Yeah, it's a
Almost
great
almost
effect.
almost everything else like on her is various physical media. Like um, her hair is watercolor and colored
Yeah.
pencil, and then her cap is gouache and colored pencil, and her cloak is cut out of these old like 1800s textiles.
Amazing. I love it. So we continue. We meet her friend here, I guess, that is like a crystal, right?
Yeah, it's like a little like four-legged crystal thing that is able to um, essentially give like readouts on things.
Yeah.
Is somewhere between like a robot, but also some sort of
Magical.
strange magical
Yeah.
creature. Um, yeah, and there's uh, a lot of that first panel is a lot of the same types of like techniques from previous pages. Like all of those flowers themselves are collaged in, just like her cloak is. There's a lot of gouache, watercolor, all of that. But as I get through, like as she's casting this spell to like harvest all of this, like that dark purple on the background is spray paint.
Mm.
And her all of the like black line work on those two small panels as she's casting is pencil. So a lot of
That's
there's
pencil?
on the I guess
Oh,
fourth and
here,
fifth.
here.
Yeah.
Right, 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 right.
Mhm.
Wow. And so are these um drawn on like separate paper and then you paste it on, or is it all on the board?
Um, there are a few pages where this differs, but on like these ones in particular, it's all on the board itself.
Wow. So a
Yeah,
lot of masking.
yeah, I have for the spray paint, I just used a lot of like Frisket film,
Yeah.
and and then similar to on that first page where you kind of notice that little bit of shadow, like I just using white like artist tape, I like tape off the borders to keep them clean, and in most instances, I just leave the tape on there.
Right. Oh my gosh. I mean, and the clean borders looks really great on it too.
Thank you.
And then you got some screen tone going on here.
Yeah, that in that instance, the screen tone is digital, similar to her shading on her skin. Um, most other instances, screen tone is actually on the physical page, like in
Wow.
that last panel, the little like town, and on those hills, there's a few little like random
Spots
splotches
of,
of
yeah.
it.
That's amazing. So she's traveling through this town and she meets this old friend,
Mhm.
just wants to kind of hang out with them, talk. I love this panel here. Just the two colored pencil, simple outline.
Mhm. Yeah, and that panel as well is done on like colored paper, pasted down. I had and to keep it very clean because I'm very messy with pencils when I'm doing all of that stuff. So I
Yeah.
light boxed so that I could have the two shades colored pencil on there very cleanly.
And then this like stucco effect that you did here, how did you manage that? Look at this
Yeah,
wall.
so that was so there's a couple of sheets of paper happening in this panel that are like I do paste together before I scan and all that. But the sign and the window frame is the same like board as the rest of the page, and then the window is a sheet of tracing paper that I used marker on, and then for the actual stucco wall, used some watercolor and just like really heavily used gouache and acrylic on there. And while it was still drying, started like uh, paste like touching it with paper towels and stuff, so it kind of ripped the paper some and like created that stucco effect.
Man, was that a happy accident or did you know
That
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 was going to
that
happen?
part was a happy accident. Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to go with it. That's when the best stuff happens sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of the like decisions of what mediums I'm going to use throughout were just kind of spur of the moment, whatever felt right then.
Yeah.
Like I keep it consistent with Zethia herself, like all of
Yes.
those, save for specific panels, are the same. But so much else is just like, right now I feel like gouache, or right now I feel like charcoal pencil or
Right.
collage or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I love when the collage is like, and just like all the stuff that's like scattered around the shop, but you got like the, the Halloween bucket here. Like, that's really great.
Yeah, there's a lot of little references to other comics in that page in particular when I was trying to fill out this like tchotchke shop, basically. And I love a cheeky little like reference to something like that. I love Easter eggs.
Yeah. So now we have this version of death coming for her friend who's, old. Such a just the way that just did the black background.
Yeah, I wanted it to pop quite a bit, and so when I was inking the background, I intentionally used like the most worn down nib, because the majority of my inking is with G nibs. Depends. I intentionally used one that was already not good quality anymore, like it had been overused, so that
Yeah.
I would have really messy line work for that to just, and bent the perspective a bunch to like warp it more, just
Yeah.
emphasize everything.
This stood out to me here too. When death is here, and he figures out it's coming for him, and oh no, this is like just this it's a really like, somber and terrifying moment, and she stands here and is like, well, before you go, it's a long you want like this is where she at, yeah, you want a cup of tea, and it's just this dun dun dun. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to obviously have a interesting like personification of death,
Yeah.
this psychopomp, as they're known, and it just felt right on like the way that she would kind of problem solve this sort of situation of like, she knows it's futile to try to stop something like this, but
Right.
maybe like delay it so that maybe he can come to terms with things, and also like maybe she can learn things about like the weird mystical aspects of the universe as well. And so with that, like I've always been a fan of that kind of long comedic beat of like repeating panels and waiting for that punchline. But then at the same time with that, like having the okay, like is in its own way like a page turn thing, because it's like, oh, now I know that they're gonna have tea. I want to see
Right.
what is that like.
Yeah. Um yeah, this whole segment is just paced perfectly. Like, it really stuck with me.
Thank you. Yeah, that page was the only instance where I had to do a second thumbnail page, because I like, as I was working all of that structure out, the 3 panels in black and white weren't there originally, and I felt like, no, I need to let that have more of a moment and like really emphasize that like feeling of dread.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really pushed it. There's a few
You
times
did.
like that where like even once I was already done with thumbnails, I was like, oh, I need to kind of tweak this a little bit. So there are a few pages, I think is on the previous spread, where I like had cut
The
out the
previous spread?
panels.
Oh.
Yeah, on this um, right here. Yeah, where there's
Oh, here?
8 panels on the bottom of the right page. Like there are a few of those panels that after I'd already done them, I was like, oh no, it would work better if it was in a different layout. So I cut them out and then pasted them back in to like move them, like the beats themselves. Like I think the little shot of Hank, the crystal guy, that was the second to last panel originally. So there's a lot of manipulating how the beats are going to work throughout the process.
You can still play with timing. And I also love how you played with the lettering here, how he's, this is probably the heaviest moment any being could go through when they realize that they're, their time. And he just the gravity of it, he's sinking to the ground and not only are the words sinking to the ground, but they're tilting too. It's just, gives you vertigo. I think that was really done really well.
Thank you. Yeah.
And then, of course, the star of the show in some ways is this. So tell us about this, man.
So this is a physical model that I built.
Let me pull that up. Let me feature that here for a second.
So he's largely made out of like trash and craft foam, like little craft things. Like underneath all this brick is craft foam, but underneath that, the head and the base structure was like the tin from some like matcha powder I had, which does mean that like his head is the lid, so I can turn it like
That's
that.
Great.
His like jetpack is like the base of it is a spool from some dental floss with lots of other little like random bits thrown on. His on his hips, there's kind of like threaded piece that looked like gears were the lids of a like prescription drug bottle, like the lid there. It's all sorts of things like that. And I cannibalized one of those like kind of cheapo like cell phone tripods that are super bendy, so that I can even like move his arms and his wrists, all brilliant. That stuff, so that I could do as much as I could to like pose him when I needed to.
Yeah.
And I crafted him before I did any of the other art on the page.
Wow.
Just so I knew what he was going to look like.
Right.
And for a while I played with a few different techniques to integrate him. At first I was thinking I might just do like take the photos and then high threshold in Photoshop, and so that he would be like black line work and color him digitally. But then I decided maybe just have him be like noticeable color, like zip tone. But after a while, I just decided no, just have him exactly how he looks in the photos. It like the first time I saw this page on the left with him like that, I immediately burst out laughing, and I was like, yeah, that's perfect, that's it.
Yeah, you got some great perspective on him too, like the shot, where he looks like a million miles tall, and especially with this one where he in his, you got the depth of field with his hand coming towards you is even blurred.
Yeah, the that first panel, the tall one that he's in, I have this little like almost chibi looking like Ultraman vinyl figure that I used as like a stand-in for Zethia there to like get that composition just right. Prior to making comics, I used to work in film. I was a camera operator and cinematographer for about 8 years. Did a lot of like street photography, so I was able to utilize a lot of those skills for photographing him. Had my rudimentary little like lighting setup, and even made out of some poster board like a little like white box room for to like photograph him in.
Yeah, that would certainly make it easy to cut him out too, when you had to.
Yeah, it was very planned out that way.
Yeah.
The one thing that I didn't plan out with him was when I came to thumbnail this page on the right, I was like, oh, I didn't ever make like a clear like entrance to him. But then I remembered that there's this little like nub on his hand in the center of
Yeah,
his hand. So I thought, oh, what if it's just like a weird like vacuum hose,
sure.
basically? And immediately it's like, oh yeah, that's the type of silliness I'm after. So it
Yeah,
works perfectly.
exactly. Yeah, and I love the cutout of it too, to like show, you know, the inside of them too.
Mhm.
Just brilliant, man.
Thank you.
So here they go, and they're making the tea. You even got like the bag of tea.
Yeah, it's an actual bag of tea.
Yep. And I love how it goes from like real cups here to, you know, drawn cups here.
So
You
on
know?
on those last two panels, they were from the same photos that I took that the prior panel used,
Mhm.
but I used marker and gouache on there, and then inked as well to differentiate them even more. Because anytime that she's basically casting a spell or something like that, I wanted to utilize that purple background with the white kind of flowery
Yeah.
accents, but for to integrate them better into a moment where it's more of mundane sort of thing happening. I wanted to uh, use all of my other mediums with that to like make it feel more normal.
Sure. That makes total sense. I also love how, you know, they get sucked up into it, but then, you know, the death figure just sort of materializes.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how you mentioned at some point in here too that there's, you know, this is a magical world, but it's also like a sci-fi world, because they talk about there being all these other planets and you know, in the galaxy, and
Mm-hmm.
how, you know, death comes for a certain type of person, but you know, even within one species there's different, you know, mythologies of death, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but then you spread all of these people across galaxies and it gets even harder, and then you cross jurisdictions.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really great touch.
Thank you. Yeah, it's on this spread,
Yeah.
which these were some of the last pages I ended up doing, and it was I believe the last two pages that I did the lettering for. So I knew this is kind of a experiment and a challenge of like how doing it this way, because I
Yeah.
wanted this whole scene to kind of feel in some ways like a montage in a movie, so that like time a lot of time can elapse from the previous two pages to the next two pages, and but then also still have a conversation happening to give those little tidbits of the world and specific things that each of them are dealing with in this moment. So how do you kind of reconcile those two things? And it was difficult for me to figure that out for a while, until out of nowhere I remembered this book. I think it was the second thing that Jonathan Hickman ever did when he was still doing the art for his books as well, called Pax Romana.
Yeah.
And there was, I believe, in the first issue of that, there's a 2-page spread where it's this like big debate of a bunch of people talking about like how do we use this. It was like time travel technology in that book, and it was very sparse in terms of your typical like sequential like imaging but had the text kind of broken down in a almost like a transcript or something.
Sure.
And that just like immediate light bulb after I remembered that. So I um, decided to have the conversations be in these blurbs, but then give them the different colored background to like help differentiate and like make it easy to know exactly who's saying what, on top of just like character voice. Um, and then on top of that, I was a little bit worried, since this is pretty abnormal for a comic to do, if somebody who doesn't know the language of comics as well might get confused of like, okay, where do I read first?
Yeah.
So I intentionally didn't write out any of the text until I was lettering the book.
Okay.
And I made sure that each like section of these like blocks of dialogue contained like a full thought, essentially, so that you could read it in any order and not get confused.
That's pretty smart. That's pretty smart. And it was super effective too, because it does feel like time is passing, you know, in a way that if you had just drawn the room with them sitting in a thing and just put their, you know, speech bubbles in there saying all of this, it wouldn't have had nearly the same effect as, you know, reading through the conversation. You know, it takes some time, and then you go back and you kind of look at what's happening, and now you know, you've had a satisfying amount of time on here where you just feel like the time passing. It worked really well.
Thank you. Yeah, I was very happy with how it ended up. And yeah, so then having this clear moment of like the montage has ended, it's a little bit even farther forward. The mugs are empty, the little treats are gone, and it's like the sun is setting, sort of thing. That was that second panel was one of the few times where I didn't use anything other than paint. Like I really wanted to give it that sort of emphasis, especially having it kind of behind everything, have a somewhat meditative beat before it got into the dialogue as well.
And so, yeah, it's time for this guy to go, you know. And she sheds a tear thinking about like the gift that he gave her. And
yeah, it was when I was working on that page, as I was starting it, it was interesting. It was like this is one of those instances where I knew I needed to like give extra space for the story than the thumbnails had originally given. So I really took my time making sure it hit all the right moments. And after I had kind of figured out that layout and was working on it, I remember like deeply like feeling like emotional loss in a way, and it was a very novel like thing to happen like while making a comic. But I felt like, okay, well, if I'm feeling this right now, then like
the reader's gonna feel it.
Yeah, see, I'm in the right going in the right direction here.
Yeah, no, it's really great.
Thank you.
This going up into the castle mech ship, you know, and just this controller with a million eyes on it. You know, it's
that was one of the earliest like concepts I had for this book. Like I initially, like the very, very basic ideas, I had like the name and a couple tiny details I had a couple years ago. But for whatever reason, I just thought, oh yeah, when she's piloting, she has a helmet and it just has a bunch of eyes.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it came from. It's just like, yeah, that's right. That's the weirdness I want. And I, like a lot of artists, I kind of did pages out of order, like when I was working on them, just like whatever felt right, and also based on like how like labor intensive each page will be, so I can like, properly work out my week and make my pages per week. But I did this one very early, and I feel like this page, especially working on the helmet, was where I finally really started figuring out like a wet blending technique I liked for gouache. So like I feel like a lot of ways this, even though I tested aspects of this mixed media with like Ghost Agents and a few other things prior, like this comic is, you can see me learning each of these different mediums better than I did prior.
Right.
And this was one of those kind of like breakthrough pages, like figuring out like, oh yeah, like exactly how to do like the little nitty gritty and getting that shading and everything.
I like on this page how you painted a little bit of glow on the hands here to power up.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing to end up trying to do. So I like when on the final actual like physical pages, I would like I always print out my like thumbnails on there very very light so that I have the exact layout and compositions right. But for him, I just had the actual photos on like printed on there as well. So
Yeah.
when I would add the little glow of that on there, it would be over that, and then having to then come into Photoshop and kind of mix them, like finesse like the photo that doesn't have the like dots of my printer and the things that I added in like paint and pencil and marker, all that stuff as well, trying to get that perfect blend in between. It's interesting. I feel it ended up working.
Yeah.
And as you were about to mention that third panel, I used a lot of the random side pieces of my deleter like screen tone sheets for that
Oh,
text.
is
And
that
like
what that is?
that's yeah, like the barcode and like all of those letters, like you can see a little bit of like the deleter logo in there that I just left to
Yeah. Oh yeah,
print out.
leader. That
Yeah,
is a trip.
I had thought of that after a while. It was like I use a lot of screen tone
Yeah,
for things, and there's always just that edge. It's not used, but I thought like why
that
not?
is so smart. Wow. Love this panel. I love this page with the,
Mhm.
broken up panels.
Yeah, I love that effect where it's you have one of the grids, but and it's technically different panels. Like I do it in a much earlier page as well, but like having it just be one shot
Yeah.
and line of action going through
Yep.
it felt right. Both of these pages were actually like very last minute additions to things to this whole book. Like originally when I had scripted it, and even up to I think the week before deadline that Eli and I had, so that we could make sure it was printed and to me in time for staple. I realized, oh, I need more time in between the previous page and this next page, the final page of the book, um, to emphasize the story, like give it that necessary time to breathe, and like have
Sure.
like that panel of her sitting on the couch,
Yeah.
clearly like contemplating everything that just happened. Without them, it just felt like a really jarring like jump
Yeah.
ahead. So even though I was by that last week, I was kind of crunched for time. I was like, no, I this has to be in here to get the feeling just right. So thankfully, I was able to do figure out how to do both of these so that it'd be fairly simple in actual time of like crafting them, but would give the narrative weight that it needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they were important pages to add. They felt
Yeah.
they felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go back to that planet and come full circle with,
Mm-hmm.
his body. No ceremonial burial, right? Dumped in a field.
Yeah, it felt like one of those. It was one of the like earliest images that kind of came to mind at once I figured out like this is the story of this issue,
Right.
and that given like how Zethia operates character wise, and how she said goodbye a little while ago, and is letting them kind of walk off with this death figure, like she would continue on her adventures, and uh, you know theoretically somebody might find them. The town's only that far away, but
Right.
it did feel like a necessary sort of like cycle of life thing, like
Yeah.
out of his remains, this
Yep.
plant life is coming.
Right.
Um,
The same plant life that we saw at the very beginning of the
Mhm.
thing, you know, so we've come full circle.
mhm.
And I love the scorch mark from the. Yeah. Such a great book, man.
Thank you.
And then the stats, you know, so it feels very, you know, D&D inspired as well. So
Mhm. Yeah, I for the numbers on her, like ingenuity and endurance, all that stuff, I used the like stat generation for from this game called Mothership. It's a like sci-fi horror RPG, and I had just like played a one shot of it a few days before doing this page, I think. So it was on my mind, but it was like, yeah, let's have it be a little specific, rather
yeah,
like different from just D&D itself.
right.
But and I wanted this to feel a little bit D&D, but also like a little bit like the like Marvel Encyclopedia, or like
Yes.
I had a
Yeah.
as a kid I had the like Ninja Turtles like Archie version of those.
Yes. Yep.
So trying to like meld a few things together there.
So good. So good. And so this is a Cosmic Lion Productions book, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, this book left me thinking for a while about it after I read it. And so like great job, man. And
Thank you.
the staying power of something like that. So simple when you look at it, but then you can really like when you as you look closer, you can see like all the touches that went into it. And then just the story feels simple, but then also sticks with you and makes you think. And I think it's just like super effective all the way around. So great job, man.
Thank you. Really
Are you going to
appreciate
do, are there going to be more issues?
There are, yeah. I
Great.
have already begun thumbnails on issue 2,
Great.
scripting as well. I within the next weeks or like next month at least, I'll be starting on pages for it.
Beautiful. So everybody go out, grab this book, go out to your computer or your phone and order it on cosmiclionproductions.com, and along with all the other fantastic books that they have, including Gray Matter Drip, The Art of Chris Anderson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we will have copies of Zethia Space Witch at Heroes Con.
Oh, great.
Time of recording this is a few weeks away.
Yes, perfect. Beautiful. And where else can people find you on the webs?
Predominantly on Instagram at mighty_peculiar is my handle. Also have AntonWBlake.com. You can find links to Zethia and to some of my other like zines and comics as well through there.
Great. Well, I'll put it all in the show notes. And yeah, all right. Well, thanks for sharing this. It's a really special book, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Of course, man. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye. Join my Patreon to see my work before anyone else. Plus, score physical sketchbooks, mini comics, and commissions delivered right to your door. And reading my new books, Something Seems Off and Three-Headed Pigman, as they are made. Go to my website to order original art, commissions, and my books, Lost Angels, Spectral: A Showcase of Fear, Chaotic Neutral, and more. Gray Matter Drip, The Art of Chris Anderson is available now from Cosmic Lion Productions. Here are the upcoming conventions I'll be at the time of this recording. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. It helps spread the word. Thanks.